Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast series for financial advisors. Today's episode is Advisor Tech Advice, AI Strategy and the Future of Wealth Management. It's a conversation with Doug Fritz, the co-founder and executive chairman of F2 Strategy. I'm Louis Diamond, and this is the Diamond Podcast for financial advisors.
At Diamond Consultants, our mission is to help advisors live their best business life. We want every elite advisor to find exactly the right place for their business and their clients to thrive, whether it's at a wirehouse, a regional, boutique, or independent firm. As the industry's leading recruiters and consultants, we've transitioned more than $250 billion in assets under management in the past decade, and each year, 25% of transitioning advisors who manage $1 billion or more are our clients. If you'd like to talk, please feel free to give us a call at 908-879-1002. Are you a financial advisor who's curious about whether you're in the best place to serve clients, or if there might be a better way to optimize your business for the future? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a new book that serves as a self-guided journey, walking you through the key steps that Diamond Consultants takes with our advisor clients, whether considering change or not. Visit diamond-consultants.com/thebook to learn more.
Technology has become the heartbeat of advisory firms, driving everything from client experience to back office efficiency to long-term enterprise value. It's a growth engine, a differentiator, and for many firms, a source of both opportunity and frustration, which is why building the right strategy, one that's future-proofed, practical, and fit for your firm, is easier said than done. Doug Fritz understands that better than most. A former chief technology officer at First Republic Wealth Management and a senior executive helping build the technology platform at Wells Fargo Private Bank and Abbott Downing, Doug has seen firsthand how large firms build and sometimes misfire when it comes to technology. Those experiences led him to co-found F2 Strategy with his wife, Liz. Together, they're on a mission to deliver enterprise-grade strategy and an outsourced chief technology officer model to RIAs and other wealth management firms looking to level up. In this episode, Doug shares what he's seeing across the industry, the aha moments that push firms to rethink their approach, what top-performing firms are doing differently, and how to future-proof your business with smart strategic tech choices. He also offers incredibly valuable insight into where AI fits into all of this and how firms of any size can start experimenting with intention. Whether you're building your first tech stack, looking to integrate AI, or just wondering what the most successful firms are doing behind the scenes, this episode offers a masterclass in modern advisory strategy. So let's dive in. Doug, thanks for joining us today. I've been really excited to have you on our show because I've seen you present at numerous conferences and I always learn a ton of new things. So thanks for joining us today.
Super excited to join. Hopefully this is valuable to folks listening and we'll keep it entertaining.
Perfect. I'm sure we will. Let's start at the beginning. Walk us through your background. Walk us through your career path and the roles you held at Wells Fargo and First Republic before starting F2.
So I started, as a lot of people do in our industry, in a thankless trade support job. My origin story just happened to start in Moscow, Russia in 1997. And I was actually an intern at a paid internship through University of Arizona with Hewlett Packard, who was like installing brand new traffic lights all over the city of Moscow. And my internship was in the accounting department because I was a Russian major and an international business major, which if you grew up in the 90s, that makes sense. If anybody like is younger than me, they're like, why the hell would you do that? But 90s kids. But they weren't giving me any work. It was like basically locked me in a closet with a bunch of ledgers and just said like, man, let's go look at that stuff. And I was ticked because I'd paid my way, wasn't getting paid for the internship, definitely wasn't going to evolve into a job, which is what I was hoping the internship would do. But I really didn't have any plans to come back to the United States and do anything. So it was like do or die in Moscow. And I was crying myself proverbially into a beer in Moscow at a bar called Chesterfield's. And this guy who was the girlfriend of a former intern through the same program who is now working at Credit Suisse heard me complain and said, wait a second, you're not paying anything. You speak Russian, you have a financial services background. He's like, show up my office on Monday. I won't pay you either. I'll give you a ton of work to do. And that was Credit Suisse. 2 weeks later, he offered me a full-time job. So that was actually my first job ever, was Moscow doing trade settlement for Russian equities in 1997. But from that point forward, it was all operations. I got involved in a lot of technology projects, moved back to the United States in 98 after long-term capital management kind of blew up emerging markets. And I was always involved in projects that started from new accounting systems to managing a repo across the world when technology needed to pass $50 billion. And then KPMG Consulting, which turned into Variant Point, picked me up and said, "Oh, global payments and global transact. We have this big project called T1. We need someone to kind of help write the business best practices for the global interaction between sell side, buy side." I think I was like 25. But you just don't pick someone 25 to run like a global best practices project. But then I had various roles. I ended up in California in '06 with Wells Fargo, working for Jay Walker's team, building out the private bank. That was amazing, right? That was the first time I think the most impactful to F2 is intentionality behind a business looking to differentiate an investor experience with advisors who've been doing the same job, basically the same way for like 30, 40 years. How do you introduce change with technology and client experience all together? And I would say anybody that's consulting ought to have come from some form of the industry for a period of time like that. I know there's really good consultants that have come out of business school and they're fantastic. My education came from watching failures and successes at a grand scale, working at Wells. And then I eventually ended up running the entire sort of advisory desktop technology suite for the private bank and the Abbott Downing team, the Alternate team there. And then great job, came up with a phenomenal brand, First Republic. It's a little bit odd. People know it now for a different reason, but back in the day, it was by far the marquee white glove, do things differently. Like really, it was the brand everybody was chasing in the client experience, private banking, traditional private banking, European private banking kind of context. And it was a CTO. And so it was literally like a great brand, great reputation, already bought in on the need for great advisor and client experience and a budget to go do something really impressive. And I leapt at that opportunity. Yeah, but all of that sort of background that led to F2. I think everything else we're going to talk about today is probably some variation of what my experience was, what my contacts were, and my understanding of the industry.
Yeah, I wanted to ask before we start talking about F2 and the work you're doing in the wealth management space today, just about your experiences about how large firms or banks approach technology. Like in your view, what were their strengths and what were their blind spots? And I'm sure the blind spots is what ultimately gave you the aha moment to start F2.
Well, for sure. For those people listening to this that are in the industry, this is not going to necessarily seem extravagantly differentiated, but it's worth giving voice to it, is that just like physical fitness, companies don't become laggards intentionally and they don't become laggards overnight. It's this constant attention to making sure that what you're doing is going towards a revised goal in the future is critical. And I think you look at some brands today that are big national or global brands that you pull a cover back and see what's going on inside the organization. It's like a time warp to 30 years ago. And you think about, oh my God, the cost of changing this to make this modern is some very large multiple of the entire annual revenue of this company just to get back on track, right? You think, how the hell did it get there? How did a firm, a great brand, to something that is approaching a death sentence for the firm versus how much money they're going to have to spend just to compete in the next 10 years? And the answers are really intriguing. And this is where I come from, right? One is that incrementally they're making changes based on where they were, not on where they need to go. And they fall into this lull, especially around technology spend of, well, we have a budget and the budget is 4% of revenue. And they don't stop, anybody stops to look around outside of them and say, well, our competitors are spending 8% of revenue on technology. And they have been for the last 7 years. That's a big old like backlog and some tech that you've got to pay down. The other one is that probably more critically is that the people at that firm that have put their career on the line to go do something transformative, two things have happened to them. One, that transformation failed, despite probably being the right thing to do, just couldn't get through the organization and failed. And that person was like axed. Get rid of Sammy. He tried to do something transformative. Like, it was Sammy's time. Get a new Sammy. Because Sammy tried to do something transformative. And everybody around Sammy realizes, like, dude, you stick your neck on the line and it fails, your career's dead. So I'm not going to stick my neck on the line. Like, I'm not going to put my... And so failure is squashed. And then the other thing is, if you're successful, you either get promoted out of that role, so you're no longer being the innovation person, or someone looks outside of the organization and says, I want Sammy. Sammy was at Goldman Sachs or was at Merrill Lynch and transformed that organization. We're going to go hire Sammy, right? Sammy, whatever the hell Sammy wants to get hired, like, we're going to pay Sammy, and they're gone. Either way, there's no real incubation of transformative thinking in the organization. And so Obviously, that's a huge learning for F2 is looking at what causes brands to fall behind. And sort of one of those aha moments is, wait a second, like how do you incubate strategic thinking? What does that look like for firms from a billion, $2 billion ROI? And the ahas are constantly paying attention to what's going on outside your four walls, constantly trying to bring in what's worked outside your four walls into your organization. That's a cultural conflict, but also that the people that are out there solving some of those really complex problems, and this is a bit of a knock on my industry, have never worked in our industry, right? They are coming in from a consulting firm and they've never sat in the seat of the person writing the check for that vendor or signing up for a 5-year transformation project. They'll get you to the, hey, you should do a transformation project. They'll cash their check and they'll leave. But they've never had to been through it. And so what we found was the aha moment for F2, which actually caused us to start the company was, my God, there should be a firm full of people who've actually been through this. What if there was a firm full of a bunch of CTOs that actually lived through it and had successes and failures that could bring forward and knew the details of the industry? That was the aha moment. And once entrepreneurs like you grew up, once you see the business, once you see it needs to get done, it was very hard to sleep without starting the business. It was hard to even think about taking a bigger CTO job someplace else.
Yep, makes sense. I think there's an ongoing debate in the industry about proprietary technology is either beloved because it's so well integrated and the whole ecosystem works, or it becomes a drag because it's legacy systems that keep changing. You have to invest a ton to retrofit and to upgrade. And by the time you upgrade, likely the next big thing is already happening. So from what you saw at Wells, First Republic, and just across the industry in general, it sounds like your belief is that more of the unbundled technology approach and not having proprietary technology is probably what you'd recommend. Am I reading that right?
Almost. Our philosophy on when you should build your own versus when you should just use what's off the shelf, a very introspective question, which is if something is so important to your brand and your competitive position, the moat around your organization upon which no one can bridge, if it's incredibly critical and having that and being great at that one thing, or maybe two things, but you should just be really one thing, owning that and being great at it and building your own technology to deliver it is probably a really good idea, depending upon budgets and certain things, right? But if it's accounting or billing or trade settlement, the like things that you're not going to win any new clients because you have a different version of that, there is very little reason why you should own that technology. Because once you own it, you've got to feed it, you got to innovate it. You're now really exposed to any kind of competitive pressure. So, for instance, if you're self-clearing and all of a sudden the world, the custodians, the large wirehouses go to smart contracts, what we would call cross trades back in the day, like just being able to settle in a blockchain. Oh man, all that money you just spent and all the years to get onto that clearing mechanism, you've got to now think, well, do I now innovate? Do I have to double my expenditure or do I just scrap it all and go back, which is still going to cost some money to go back? So it's that if you're truly different, with planning is different, onboarding is different, type of investments you provide is different, like then it's a candidate for having your own technology. But until then, man, like most of what people want to do, you can do with a vendor.
Yep, makes sense. So you and your wife, Liz Fritz, the two F's, as I've heard you say, for F2, decide to launch F2 Strategy. What was the major gap that you saw in the marketplace?
Great question, Lewis. There are two needs in the market. We already talked about like a consulting firm full of experts that really knew their stuff. That was probably one. I think the other was really the market focus. And back in 2016, I think now when we started the firm, it's about just over 9 years old, there were big consulting firms helping big wealth management, asset management firms, and they could run $100 million projects, these big things with teams of 20, 30 people. But if you looked at the rest of the industry, especially if you look at like the size of our industry, there are thousands and thousands of firms that are below, say, 150 billion. In fact, there are probably 10,000 below a billion. There were smaller firms that were like one or two consultant kind of firms, and there still are, that are really good focusing on that smaller set. But there wasn't what I would call an institutional consulting business model to address it. And so when I started F2, definitely wanted to keep solving problems. My favorite thing of what I do is just solve problems for great brands and help businesses move forward. It's what gets me up in the morning. But I wanted to do it at an institutional level. I really wanted to prove to myself and to the industry that you could take experts out of the industry, create consultants out of experts, and then scale that business. I can't tell you why that was like a critical thing, but it was in my brain since day one. And so the gap that was missing was really an institutional place where experts could leave corporate America from their CTO jobs and they had a home. There was a home and it looked and felt like a large consulting firm with equity, and all the professionalism around HR systems and 401ks. And it was a professional company, but it was doing the transformative work at scale. And that didn't exist. And that was part of the idea behind F2, which was let's build a really scalable sort of enterprise grade consulting business. And I think 9 years in, we're basically there. I mean, that's what we've been working on for 9 years.
Yeah. So it sounds like 9 years ago, 10 years ago, it was you hire the big management consulting firms, the KPMGs, the EYs, the McKinseys to do a massive technology strategy project. Maybe they help with the implementation, maybe they don't. But to afford those types of firms, you have to be Morgan Stanley, UBS, Wells Fargo, First Republic. If you're even a $10 billion RIA, a big RIA, you're not going to be able to afford that, nor do you want to. So the option was either you hire the 1 or 2 man band who can probably help with one area, but isn't going to be a full end-to-end solution. So it sounds like you saw the gap and have executed on it.
And that's it. Like for the cost of this to sound the area a little bit, but for the cost of a really great PowerPoint presentation by very smart MBA grads, like very smart people, F2, we would give you maybe not as pretty of a PowerPoint presentation, but like we would actually help you get the execution done for the same amount of money.
Makes sense. I said the same thing. Like I'm a recruiter and a consultant. If you want a pretty PowerPoint, it's not me, but we'll give you really good and objective advice.
Well, my marketing team would probably want me to say like our PowerPoint presentations are really pretty, but we probably don't have as many MBA. Yeah, we don't have as many Ivy League MBAs as others.
I gotcha. Has the vision of what F2 was when you and Liz started it 9 years ago, is it the same or has it evolved at different points along the road since you started it?
Yeah, great. Phenomenal questions. And I want to be careful on how I say this, but like I have reason to believe that the initial premise was successful. There's no finish line in any of this stuff. We operate like a startup. We operate hungry, right? We're hungry as a firm. We want to stay hungry. There's a great Amazon corporate letter from Jeff Bezos about being a day one company or day two company. And I would highly recommend any executive read the email to his organization about always being a day one company. But as we got traction, as we were at like 25 employees, I think that the vision didn't change. I think what we said to ourselves was we have reason to believe we have a brand and not maybe an ownership, but we're in the club, the top wealth management strategy, technology strategy, innovation strategy firms. What could we do in addition to being a great strategic partner for our clients that would help maximize the value of the relationship with that too? And that's when we started to look for capital. That's when we added advisor growth marketing services through acquisition, software implementation services, staff augmentation services. And we are continuing with a capital partner, continue to acquire other businesses. I think about a pyramid. I'm holding my hands up like the top of the pyramid for anybody just listening, but there are blocks below that pyramid that when you own the top of the pyramid, it's actually counterintuitively easier to put blocks in below. You start as like a hardcore tech infrastructure. You're going to get to a lot of revenue quickly, but you're going to fight to get the brand and the reputation of being more and more strategic. And from the bottom up, it's very hard. Top down, it's just easier.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like the vision has been recognized, but now it's about innovating different services in different ways to more robustly serve the clients you've worked so hard to amass. So it's more of a continuation of the vision, or making the vision even bigger than it was. I should have asked this earlier, but for those who aren't as familiar with F2 strategy, what types of projects are you normally taking on for RIAs and wealth management firms of different shapes and sizes?
Yeah, I would say our bread and butter. It's like you go to the tire store, they're going to put tires in your car, but they got mufflers, they got other kinds of things that they do too. We do a lot of work in tech strategy, and that's going to be either firms are big enough, say they're 5 billion in assets or 3 billion in assets. The money that we're spending on technology isn't just flying around. For $3 billion firms, if you've met plenty, I'm guarantee you've met as many as I have, there's a lot of money flying at things that don't make a lot of sense, right? There's just shiny objects everywhere and just money's flying out the door.
Yeah, the classic, I was at a conference and saw this vendor, we should implement it.
Now we have 4 of them after 3 years of conferences, and then none of them talk. So it's time at about 3 to 5 billion to have an actual proper roadmap. Lowering risk, lowering the amount of just churn and frustration, definitely lower the costs of doing this over time. And we're going to hit a steady state run rate of our tech expense that makes sense for our business, but keeps us relative and kind of delivers on something. You need a professional to come in and do that. And people will hire a CTO, which is awesome. But in some cases, they'll hire a CTO, then they don't get anything done because all I have is this internal strategist, and F2 kind of brings in the strategy and the execution work. But in addition to that, anything that you need a firm that truly understood the nuanced details. So we're completing a project this week with a very large firm on their core accounting and clearing system and understanding, is it the right thing for us? Is it the right full vendor approach? How should we approach this vendor? My God, if you didn't understand, I had lived with that vendor, operated with that vendor for a long time, I don't know how anybody could be valuable. It's so entrenched in the genetics of firms. Those are examples of projects we do. And then we also do a lot of marketing growth, kind of content, website design, but also like, who are we as a firm socially, so that the brand, especially these large aggregator firms now, like they need a brand. They've got 20 firms came together. Who are we publicly now? How do we use that brand to drive affinity and drive business inbound? We do a lot of that work too.
Two follow-up questions. First one is, are you platform or tool agnostic? So let's take performance reporting. So you'll help people evaluate Attopar, Orion, Black Diamond, and probably 15 others I've never heard of.
100%. We have zero arrangements with any software firms that would pay us to refer them. So from a strategy standpoint, we're agnostic. We are offering our implementation services, which is what we do for our clients anyway, to software firms now, so that if they want qualified wealth management professionals to help execute and implement their software in a wealth management firm, our people can be brought in by that software vendor to go run the implementations. And that's called Pulse. We had a press release about that a few weeks ago. The intention of that is to create fewer software implementation headaches, not just for the software firm, but for the wealth management firms, by having people that grew up in our industry, really understood not just the tool, how are people going to use this tool as part of the implementation team? And there's a little nuance in terms of how SaaS-based software firms get valued, that it's a really complicated tool. The revenue associated with professional services drags down the valuation of the firm. They want a higher SaaS as a percentage of revenue. They want a higher SaaS ratio versus professional services. I'm happy to take the revenue and take my experts and put them anywhere they need to go. It's been a natural, good fit. But in none of those cases are we a kind of sales credit.
Very smart. And the other follow-up question was, is there a minimum size firm that you work with, either because you want to be focused on a certain segment or because you're expensive and firms below a certain threshold maybe can't afford your services?
Unfortunately, it's the latter. We don't have any stated minimums. What we find is that because we're strategists, we don't have our own software. So we're not selling you a license that would be an inexpensive license for something. So having us come in and do an assessment and help you execute at, usually it's below about 2 billion roughly. But we do have clients below that are going to be $10 billion firms. They're just smaller now. They're like, that's fine. I'm PE backed. I'm going to go acquire the firms. I'd rather spend the money now so that when I start bringing in a capital partner, I start acquiring on my business, I'm going to do it with less cost and go faster. And so we do have firms under that, but it's just a matter of course. It's usually about $1 billion to 2 billion is the level at which firms are like, hey, we need to bring F2 in. Over time, that's stuck in the back of my mind because I want to help solve problems of smaller and smaller firms. And so we are working on a few business models that would help us to be strategic, but in a more packaged. Remember when I said before, we're going to be an institutionalized firm, we want to build this for scale. The F2 wheels are turning about how we can deliver more packaged services at a lower level or for lower cost without as much flexibility and customization of what the output is.
Makes sense. I mean, it's similar to how advisors segment their clients. They have their core, their niche, and then they figure out ways to service smaller or less profitable relationships. And typically it's through the exact same method that you just mentioned. What about just common patterns you see across the industry when it comes to firms' technology challenges? Are there one or two things that you're seeing most firms struggling with?
Yeah, not having a plan is by far the number one thing. And it causes friction and frustration just because there's a sense that it's not working the way that it should, but there isn't any in the organization. So it doesn't feel right versus what? You have never sat down and thought what you want the experience to be. That's one. I think one of the major common frustrations right now, we do a lot of work on this, is the large acquiring firms that have brought in businesses that fundamentally have some nuances of their business models and their value propositions that just got overlooked when they were bringing them together. If you've ever listened to Amy Totola talk, she does a phenomenal job of talking about culture, a pre-M&A qualifying concept. We sort of probably deal with it more on the back end of after it's been incurred. But it's that you're bringing people together that have different ways of working. And why changing those behaviors is so difficult is because what advisors do and how they work with clients, even the tools that they use, is so tightly linked to the value that they believe to their clients. And when you change it from, hey, I'm using this planning tool for the last 15 years. I just want to change planning tools. How hard could that be? Oh my God, the entire assumptions are on goals-based versus cash flow-based planning is massive. And I got to change my entire story with all my clients that I've had for 15 years. That's a tremendous undertaking. And it feels more like coercion than adoption. That's another big one. I think we see firms that have either vastly underspent and are now just like, well, we have Microsoft Excel and this is a literal quote from one of my clients. And if this person is listening, this is a very good friend of mine, he'll know it's him, is like, they're Excel spreadsheets, Doug, but they're all password protected. It's fine. We're totally fine. And they're no longer, after working with us, they're no longer on Excel spreadsheets, clearly, but it's just underinvesting in technology for a long period of time. Firms that have really wild technology decisions that have just literally built the entire architecture backwards. They've made strategic decisions on ancillary little things. It's like buying a home and then renovating a front door, and then everything inside the house has to match the front door. You're like, this is the stupidest way to internally design the architecture of a house. But we see that frequently where bad early decisions or decisions that aren't really primary to the success of the business drive subsequent decisions into really odd ways.
Makes sense. And on that same topic, we encounter a lot of advisors and help launch, at this point, hundreds and hundreds of independent firms. So let's say it's someone who's launching an RIA, because if someone's going independent through a broker dealer, they're going to rely upon the technology of that BD. So a little bit less relevant. But let's say it's an advisor who is starting an RIA, whether they're leaving a BD to start an RIA, leaving a wirehouse, leaving a private bank, et cetera. On the one hand, it seems like to what you're saying, like starting early is a good thing because you have a blank canvas. You don't have to redo the windows because you redid the door, to use your analogy. What would be some advice or guidance you'd give to someone who's building a tech stack for the first time and has the benefit of a beginner's mindset? They don't have legacy mistakes, legacy systems, legacy habits. They get to really start fresh in something new.
The answer I'm going to give is an incredibly hard thing to do. It's going to sound like, well, why would you do that? But in practice, it's incredibly difficult to do. Is at inception, and if you're already started, this is still something we ask our clients to do, either in as articulate as possible. Like, I'm always going to keep asking my clients more and more detailed questions so that it's fine grained. Is how do we win? Who do we win? How do we win? Clients got $10 million walking around the street. There are 15 options for them to go to within a 4-mile radius where we live. Why us? Is it price? Is it service? Is it the complexity of the offering? Is it that we plan first? Is it the background and emotional bedside manner of our advisors on our team? And if any of those things are yes, well, then how? Why? Go into crazy detail, almost to the point where you'll say we're going to win on business owners from the age of 38 to 47 that were born into wealth and have some complex wealth and some future distribution, but also sizable on paper wealth and minimum liquid wealth to invest. And our intention is to win them, help them with their business, meet their business partners, and then be with them for 15 years when they become centimillionaires. That's the vision. And we're going to do it in this geography with this type of persona of a person.
Very specific.
That's specific. Yeah. And the reason why it's hard is that the mind of an advisor is well, what if someone walks in and they got $50 million right now? I'm going to let them walk out the door and not serve them? No, but you just got to be really specific what you're building for. And you take that to, for example, CRM configuration, right? Most CRM tools are freaking awesome. It's the usage and the design of them that typically tends to suffer. If you have that specific, how that arc of the prospect to client is going to, what type of client you're going to serve, you can actually architect in a really amazing, streamlined, automated, delightful experience for that persona or profile of that firm or that client you want to work with. And your CRM is going to help drive your business. If you don't do that, if you don't have that definition, then CRM just becomes this really crappy operations tool that no one really likes and is a drag on productivity.
If I'm starting a firm fresh, what are the elements of the technology stack that in your view are non-negotiable that you have to have? I would imagine it's CRM, planning software, performance reporting, aside from Outlook and Office. What else? I always caution advisors, when you're starting off, you don't want to have all these fixed expenditures. You don't want to do all these crazy things. You got to really nail the basics first. So I'm wondering, what would be the basics that any firm would need to operate before getting into AI and this crazy rebalancer and customize whatever? Like, what are the basics?
My favorite consulting answer, because it depends, right? If you're going to predominantly be a planful organization, the planning tool would be the number one thing, right? Getting a planning tool that's going to help you manage and grow your business early, far more important than the very first question you ask is who's your custodian? And there are vastly, as you know, there are big differences. And I love seeing like Altruist and Goldman come to market right now because we're really introducing this almost nuanced difference between these custodians that we didn't really have before. So I'd say custodian first. That's your first decision, who you work with. Do your homework, look at who people are using, because it's really hard to change. Once you start, man, if you're going to manage complex wealth, sometimes a really good CRM configuration that can manage the tasks that are going on in a state and capital calls and distributions and contributions to invest, like something that can traffic cop the tasks. That's a really good first tool. The new AI task management tools work great in conjunction with CRMs. I think if we cast our vision 5, 10 years in the future, and this is probably tick off a lot of people, AI is getting so good so fast that I'm not sure there's a category 10 years from now really called CRM. I think we may just call it advisory desktop and it's going to be run by AI because a lot of what AI is doing now is the same things that we're going to do manually in a CRM. I am not the only person who correlated the AI advancement with the competitiveness to CRM. Performance reporting is really critical. I think being able to tell the story is important. It isn't typically something that wins business. The how I tell you how I did, I have to have you as a client before I have the right to tell you how I did. And so we do see firms that sign up first with like an Adapar. Adapar's freaking amazing. Like I was one of Adapar's very first clients at First Republic, and I've been a fan of Adapar and a part of Adapar forever, right? Love what they do. And many of our clients that are starting really complex multifamily offices, it's the right decision because they're bringing complex assets in from their other organizations as they build it, and they need a home to manage those assets. If you're launching from scratch and you're really trying to build your business, it might not be the most important thing. But for complex wealth, getting together, performance is one of the first ones. So that's the depends answer, Lewis. Like it depends.
How much, and this may be a novice question because I'm not a user of technology, but I know as part of the due diligence that advisors do on custodians, it's understanding their technology tools, the Wealthscape from Fidelity or whatever Schwab's called, or Pershing's Wove or Pershing Advisor 360. I forget what they're all called. How important is the custodian's technology versus the API links they have to all the third-party tools?
It's a great question. And another, it depends answer from the consultants, right? So if you're under 750 million in assets, most of what you need to run your business comes from a custodian. They've got good trading platforms. They got a good client digital portal. They've got some planning tools. They've got quite a bit of good technology to use. People outgrow the custodian technology right at about 500 million to 700 million. At that point, you're big enough like, hey, we're going to be customized. We're going to have a better planning tool. We're going to have a better performance tool. We're going to have a better trading tool. Then they start branching off and making decisions. But some of our clients are launching and they're bringing advisors and wealthy clients in to help found RIAs. It's a really new thing where it's like a $2 billion overnight, not even breakaway. They just come from different places. They're breaking away from their other RIAs. In those cases, the custodian technology is probably not that important. And even at like 2 billion, even like 5 billion, an API application protocol, you have to know how to code it into what you're doing. It isn't like a flag you flip on some web screen. You have to actually code into that. Unless you have someone, either an internal person or you're working with a tech partner on the outside that can actually integrate the APIs for you, they're basically useless. It's like cheat codes, but you don't have a controller. So the API world is not wholly reserved for some of the larger firms, but anybody under $1 billion, we don't see as much utilization of the API capabilities for sub $1 billion firms.
Let's pivot a little bit to talking about F2 again. I saw in the press that recently you decided to take on a private equity investor, and probably a decision that a lot of advisors face. What's the use case? Was it the right time? What's the valuation, et cetera? But for you, what made now the right time for the decision to take on a private equity partner? And what is it that you were hoping to gain?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is fascinating that F2 working with so many PE-backed advisory businesses is on the same track. And I think our advice to our clients has materially changed. We did a project where it was a firm is like going through like 3 acquisitions a year, and they needed tech architecture work. They needed like a strategy, and but their budgets were super tight. Especially they were held by the fire by their PE partner. And I'm like, well, I'll just make it a deal expense. And they're like, what? Like, well, we're going to do a roadmap, and it's going to cost you $100,000 something. And it's like a 60-day roadmap project, but we're going to make it a deal expense. We're going to make it part of the merger. These firms come together. We're going to kick the expense back to the deal. Like, you could do that. I'm like, of course you could do that. And so that was fantastic. They're like, oh man, this is great. You set them financially machine out technology innovation. No, but the partners were Novus Capital, and it's the top performing. Folks don't know Novus. It's the top performing small and mid-sized private equity firm in the country, and they focus on founder-led businesses that have not gone through M&A before, have a strong value proposition, strong leadership, and like team, but can become platform firms. And so could not be happier with that, with the partner. The reason why we went for capital when we did was we have 25 employees at F2. We, back to like what I was saying before, we were owning the top of the pyramid, and we knew that the opportunity to deepen those capabilities with our clients was there. People were asking for us before we had a marketing team, because Liz ran all of our communications and marketing with a small team. Our own wealth management clients would say, can you just come in and do what you do for F2, but for us? And we'd say like, nope, we just got a 3-person team doing that. So we knew we could go deeper, and to go deeper organically, we would have to learn how to do these businesses. I would have to learn how to hire marketing executives, and I would have to learn how to hire staff augmentation people, and I would have to do it manually. And I have as much ego as any other person, but I know I don't know a lot of things. And if I don't know them, I'm not going to pretend like I know them. And so having a capital partner where we could go and acquire some of those businesses around us that I think strategically and also culturally were going to be good fits for us, that was the rationale. And I think also, being maybe overly honest here, I didn't start F2 thinking it was going to be a 140-person consulting firm. That's where we are right now. We hired a new CEO, Ryan Beach, in December to actually run the day-to-day of the company. I know where my limitations are, and private equity could come in and help us really scale that business. They could look at the business, look at our books, look at our finances, look at our sales pipeline, our roles, et cetera, and say, okay, here's what this business looks like at $100 million in revenue a year, right? So we're going to build to a $100 million revenue company, and we're going to do it through inorganic and organic means. But someone else comes in with that playbook. Clearly, they're going to come in with a big paycheck and acquire other businesses, but it was time for F2 to have a professional partner to help us and we've been executing on it for now almost 2 years.
Makes sense. I mean, honestly, we see it with RIAs and wealth management firms too. It's often when a firm wants to start going inorganic that it's a requirement these days to have private equity or some sort of institutional capital, because they're expensive. There's a lot of know-how. And if you're not doing it, other people have that expertise. So that makes sense.
Yep.
All right. So let's do a complete pivot here. I've been most excited to speak with you because of what I've heard you talk about on AI. And that's the big buzzword. We're recording this in 2025. It's probably going to be a big buzzword for the next 20, 30 years until it's just normal and it's just intelligence. It's not even artificial anymore. But there's a lot of hype in the space, even just on the personal side, folks using ChatGPT to come up with their vacation itinerary. But let's talk more about the industry. So a lot of hype with AI, a lot of promise. What do you see as the most compelling and meaningful use cases for financial advisors to start using AI right now?
It's a very pertinent and timely question. Two ground pieces of information before we get into what it is. One is going back to the origin story of F2, because we're all former professionals in the industry, we are very naturally suspicious of the hype cycle. Most of the hype cycle you can see with robo advice right now. These are hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars got spent on robo advice and like transformation that never took off. Those in the industry who are close to it could have and did say like, this is never going to replace advisors. Clients are not going to move to this thing wholesale. A lot of consulting firms made a ton of money selling fear, and then massive transformation projects that never took off. And you can see that gameplay over and over again of people that have been led to be fearful and led to spend millions of dollars from very smart people who really didn't know the details enough, the industry, to be able to call a real movement or not. AI started to really materially creep down into RA land. We were very skeptical. The second thing is we run something called the Tech Executive Forum. It's now 210 of the top CTOs and CEOs in the country. We do 7 research projects a year, roughly. We started in 2023 with our first state of AI and wealth management. We did another one in the springtime. So we have benchmark now of how people are using AI and its impact. And we're seeing not just an interest in it, but evidenced utilization and really going back to being skeptical. Remember, I'm skeptical, but the wateringly large amount of productivity gains, the meeting task tracking AI that plugs into sort of conversational AI that we're doing right now, to the tune of 90 minutes of saved time per client meeting. And that equates into days per month of
Wow.
savings.
So that's one big use case is the everyone's seen it, like the transcription has joined your Zoom meeting. So basically transcribing client meeting notes, having the tasks follow-ups. So that seems like it's like low-hanging fruit.
It's
What are some of the
cost
other?
versus value is insane.
Yep.
So the other ones are find me things to talk to my clients about in the next session. So look at
Hmm.
the demographics of my client, the information I have about them, their age, the types of accounts they have, transactions or like balances of transactions, and give me things to talk to my clients about in short form and build me a kind of like the chat GPT version of like what my itinerary is. Build me a 1 hour meeting agenda and the details for that meeting automatically. And that could take someone days. Wells Fargo used to take us days to prep for client meetings,
Hmm.
transactions, performance, correlations, benchmarks, marketing information. Now you just basically have meeting prep automated and all that information flows through. And so, yeah, meeting prep and creating meaningful, great conversations with clients. I think also things like automating marketing messaging and
Hmm.
specific marketing content, both also great use case, creating a journey of engagement before any human may even talk or outside of a human talking to someone. All those are really good. Back in 2023, the third highest predicted use case of AI was in predictive analytics. Like, tell me what's going to happen, help me build better portfolios based on trends. Tell me what this trend is going to happen, what's going to happen in the future. That third highest use case projected got knocked down to 7. So predictive analytics and anything that's associated with trading, any kind of highly regulated, compliance rich stuff, things like trading, billing, performance calculations have been very low in terms of adoption and interest in using those technologies. And it's right now that the use in the industry is save me time, make me have better conversations with my clients. Don't cross over these third rails of open AI and like my client's information being exposed to the world. Keep it all condensed, keep it all compliant, and just make me a better advisor and make me a better, faster operations person. I think we're going to be in this space for a while. I don't think any firm's going to leap out and have like AI based rebalancing
Right.
that like times the market. I just don't think, at least in the next 5 years, we're going to see any of that coming to market.
How about 5 years from now? We're having this conversation. What does AI look like within the space? Like, how's the day in the life of an advisor or a firm changed?
I think it's going to keep driving people to being better advisors. So here's 5 people you need to email right now with these specific things because their social posts had this content or the company or the industry they work on had that event happen and they need to hear this from you. Press button or just push like auto review and compliance. And you have like AI a little bit. The context and things we talk about with our clients will be highly curated and very personal. So even to some extent, the portfolio will probably be very similar to what it is right now. Math's not going to change overnight, but how we talk about the companies that we're invested in, how we talk about how this portfolio and its trajectory is leading to indications of, hey, I think we keep this up in a couple of years, we can actually set up a DAF or fund that DAF sooner. And by the way, there's a whole video and thing about your DAF program and like the Fritz family philanthropic vehicle, and it's all running on Rails. I think also AI is going to operational tasks. I think about sort of other tax preferential investment vehicles. A lot of that stuff, you think of, there's a company called Luminary. If you haven't heard from Luminary before, it's actually owned by Joe Lonsdale from Marsh, but like takes a lot of that complex stuff that single family offices do all the time. That's what their whole purpose is to avoid taxes and manage the wealth. But a lot of wealth firms weren't necessarily doing that complex estate planning stuff. AI is really accelerating those
Hmm.
things. And so you're going to see, I'm going to call them institutional type things, but they're family office or institutional type things coming down market fast. And so we just got people need to keep up on not just the technology, but as a competitive positioning, like can you do more for your normal wealthy clients that you couldn't do because it would have taken too much time and you didn't have an expert in house to do it.
Yeah, makes sense. And give me one word answer here. Most people have seen the McKinsey report that came out in the beginning of 2025 that called for, I think it was 100,000 advisor shortfall over the next decade. Do you believe that AI and the efficiencies is a way to make that number less? So even if 100,000 new advisors don't come into the industry, that we don't necessarily need as many advisors because each advisor is going to be able to be that much more productive.
Yes, absolutely. The time saved per client will allow advisors to manage more clients. The asterisk next to my yes is, and I think the McKinsey report missed this, which was, does that mean advisors go out and win more business? Because advisors typically, like, they get to a level and I'm good. As long as I'm making my money, I've got my clients, I'm no longer after, say, 102,
Right.
right? Like, it doesn't create a hunger to
Right.
go get 200. That doesn't exist. And so firms are going to have to see those advisors basically have to start force feeding them new clients.
Meaning like an advisor has a choice between I have so much more efficiency so I can take off Fridays to go boating or to golf, or I can use the extra 8 hours I have in my week to go and network and do seminars
Yeah.
and bring in more clients. That makes sense.
And human nature is not going to change. And so that level of annuitized business model, AI will give people the ability to have more clients, but honestly, people have the ability to have more clients now. They don't because they reach a certain level.
That's a pretty good option. I mean, right?
Yeah.
I can work less or I can grow more. Like both are pretty good outcomes if you leverage it. All right, Doug, let's keep on the AI train here. What advice would you give to an advisor or a firm owner who wants to start incorporating AI, but they don't really know where to begin? Like they've heard of ChatGPT or they use it, but they don't really know like where to start with all these AI tools and all these different use cases. Like, how do you start?
So, like, stop anything you're doing, go to, if you're using Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics, find your CRM company and figure out who does the best job of integrating into that CRM company. And within a day, get demos of Jump, Millie, Zeppelin, Zox, really good company called Zox. There's like 4 or 5 of these firms that are at call recording, task creation, and sort of operational lifts around client meetings. Get demos set up, figure out from your CRM company which ones integrate best. We've done this for a lot of our clients. Like generally, it's so easy to integrate. They're already based, all those tools are already built to integrate, and just sign up. We had a client call us about a month and a half ago. Operationally, they wanted to pay us like a bunch of money on a CRM review and a workflow optimization thing. And they were getting ready to spend tens of thousands of dollars on this project. I said, look, I'll take your money, but before we do anything, I need you to talk to these vendors, get them on board. I think this is going to solve 75% of your problem. And it did. In 2 weeks, they had saved themselves a day per week of
Wow.
operational overhead. And at some point, they'll call us back and we'll do a project. But like, I'm fine not taking your money and you're happy. Like, you're going to be a brand referral for us all over. But yeah, I would say do that right now. The cost versus the value is astonishing.
Yep. And also, those are tools that they're built for this one specific use case. And it's something that every advisor, every firm has is meetings. So
Yep.
I like that. And like start small, right? You don't have to do everything at once. You incorporate one of these things, you see how it works, you get widespread adoption, see the
Yep.
efficiencies, and then you can move on to the next one.
Yeah, they already did that. They want the next phase. They can call F2. We'll help them
Yep.
with like the second, third, and fourth projects.
One last question for you, Doug. What's one piece of advice you'd give to a firm who wants to future-proof its business through technology? And that's a tough question.
It's the easiest question in the world because tying this whole conversation back together, if you know why you're winning, if you know why of the last 10 clients that came to work with me, what was it about me and my firm that won them over? And I know why I'm winning. I know what I'm doing. That's your technology needs to be focused on doing that really well. The thing that's paying the bills, that's growing the business, might only be like 10, 15% of my overall tech budget feeds that thing. Turn that sucker around. Everything else you're spending on, don't spend more, reduce as much cost as possible, and focus your energy on delivering that thing that grows your business as great as you possibly can. Integrated, customized it, put it on your website, make sure all your clients are getting access to it, make sure your prospects know they can do it. Future-proofing your business is being laser focused on what you're doing really well and how you're winning in the industry, and then making sure that all your technology lines up with your business outcomes. And it sounds super simple, right? Like line your business and your technology up to the same goal, and you will be future proof. There's no mystery around it. It just takes a bit of work.
I love it. An example would be we're experts at trust in estates. So invest in the technology that makes you more efficient and provide better outcomes around trust in estates rather than growing the baseline at that and kind of spreading it elsewhere. Focus on your core competency, what makes you world class, and that will be how you continue to shine and be future proofed.
100%. You got it.
Well, Doug, this has been so much fun. I probably have like 50 more questions for you as a tech novice, but I think at least to scratch the itch for many of our users, I think it was a great primer in what's going on in technology and AI, how firms get started using AI, build great tech stacks, and you're clearly an expert. So we'll have to do this again soon.
Thanks for having me. Happy to jump on again we'll do a round 2 sometime in the future, but thanks so much for having me and for putting this on.
Thanks, Doug.
As a financial advisor, you hold yourself to the highest standards of integrity, honesty, and credibility. You are successful because you take your professional responsibilities seriously and are dedicated to your clients. But are you living your best business life? Are your goals aligned with your firm's, or could a better option exist? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a book written with you in mind. It's a self-guided journey that walks you through the key steps that we take with our advisor clients. This strategic thought process and roadmap to professional self-discovery is designed to help you ask the right questions and think critically and objectively, whether you're considering change or not. Learn how to get your copy at diamond-consultants.com/thebook.